touching her bowed-over form on the shoulder, said, "Woman, if you would only believe, you could be wholly loosed from your spirit of infirmity." And this woman, who had been bowed down and bound up by the depressions of fear for more than 18 years, believed the words of the Master, and by faith straightened up immediately. When this woman saw that she had been made straight, she lifted up her voice and glorified God. Notwithstanding that this woman's affliction was wholly mental, her bowed-over form being the result of her depressed mind, the people thought that Jesus had healed a real physical disorder. Although the congregation of the synagogue at Philadelphia was friendly toward the teachings of Jesus, the chief ruler of the synagogue was an unfriendly Pharisee. And as he shared the opinion of the congregation that Jesus had healed a physical disorder, and being indignant because Jesus had presumed to do such a thing on the Sabbath, he stood up before the congregation and said, "Are there not 6 days in which men should do all their work? And these working days come, therefore, and be healed, but not on the Sabbath day." When the unfriendly ruler had thus spoken, Jesus returned to the speaker's platform and said, "Why play the part of hypocrites? Does not every one of you, on the Sabbath, loose his ox from the stall, and lead him forth for watering? If such a service is permissible on the Sabbath day, should not this woman, a daughter of Abraham who has been bound down by evil these 18 years, be loosed from this bondage and led forth to partake of the waters of liberty and life, even on this Sabbath day?" And as the woman continued to glorify God, his critic was put to shame, and the congregation rejoiced with her that she had been healed. As a result of his public criticism of Jesus on this Sabbath, the chief ruler of the synagogue was deposed, and a follower of Jesus was put in his place. Jesus frequently delivered such victims of fear from their spirit of infirmity, from their depression of mind, and from their bondage of fear. But the people thought that all such afflictions were either physical disorders or possession of evil spirits. Jesus taught again in the synagogue on Sunday, and many were baptized by Abner at noon on that day, in the river which flowed south of the city. On the morrow, Jesus and the 10 apostles would have started back to the Pella encampment, but for the arrival of one of David's messengers, who brought an urgent message to Jesus from his friends at Bethany, near Jerusalem. 4. The message from Bethany. Very late on Sunday night, February 26, a runner from Bethany arrived at Philadelphia, bringing a message from Martha and Mary which said, "Lord, he whom you love is very sick." This message reached Jesus at the close of the evening conference, and just as he was taking leave of the apostles for the night. At first Jesus made no reply. There occurred one of those strange interludes, a time when he appeared to be in communication with something outside of and beyond himself. And then, looking up, he addressed the messenger in the hearing of the apostles, saying, "This sickness is really not to the death. Doubt not that it may be used to glorify God and exalt the Son." Jesus was very fond of Martha, Mary, and their brother Lazarus. He loved them with a fervent affection. His first and human thought was to go to their assistance at once, but another idea came into his combined mind. He had almost given up hope that the Jewish leaders at Jerusalem would ever accept the kingdom, but he still loved his people, and there now occurred to him a plan whereby the scribes and Pharisees of Jerusalem might have one more chance to accept his teachings, and he decided, his Father willing, to make this last appeal to Jerusalem the most profound and stupendous outward working of his entire earth career. The Jews clung to the idea of a wonder-working deliverer, and though he refused to stoop to the performance of material wonders or to the enactment of temporal exhibitions of political power, he did now ask the Father's consent for the manifestation of his hitherto unexhibited power over life and death. The Jews were in the habit of burying their dead on the day of their demise. This was a necessary practice in such a warm climate. It often happened that they put in the tomb one who was merely comatose, so that on the 2nd or even the 3rd day such a one would come forth from the tomb. But it was the belief of the Jews that, while the spirit or soul might linger near the body for 2 or 3 days, it never tarried after the 3rd day, that decay was well advanced by the 4th day, and that no one ever returned from the tomb after the lapse of such a period. And it was for these reasons that Jesus tarried yet 2 full days in Philadelphia before he made ready to start for Bethany. Accordingly, early on Wednesday morning he said to his apostles, "Let us prepare at once to go into Judea again." And when the apostles heard their master say this, they drew off by themselves for a time to take counsel of one another. James assumed the direction of the conference, and they all agreed that it was only folly to allow Jesus to go again into Judea, and they came back as one man and so informed him. Said James, "Master, you were in Jerusalem a few weeks back, and the leaders sought your death, while the people were minded to stone you. At that time you gave these men their chance to receive the truth, and we will not permit you to go again into Judea." Then said Jesus, "But do you not understand that there are 12 hours of the day in which work may safely be done? If a man walks in the day, he does not stumble, inasmuch as he has light. If a man walks in the night, he is liable to stumble, since he is without light. As long as my day lasts, I fear not to enter Judea. I would do one more mighty work for these Jews. I would give them one more chance to believe, even on their own terms, conditions of outward glory and the visible manifestation of the power of the Father and the love of the Son. Besides, do you not realize that our friend Lazarus has fallen asleep, and I would go to awaken him out of this sleep?" Then said one of the apostles, "Master, if Lazarus has fallen asleep, then he will the more surely recover." It was the custom of the Jews at that time to speak of death as a form of sleep, but as the apostles did not understand that Jesus meant that Lazarus had departed from this world, he now said plainly, "Lazarus is dead, and I am glad for your sakes, even if the others are not thereby saved, that I was not there, to the end that you shall now have new cause to believe in me, and by that which you will witness, you should all be strengthened in preparation for that day when I shall take leave of you, and go to the Father." When they could not persuade him to refrain from going into Judea, and when some of the apostles were loath even to accompany him, Thomas addressed his fellows, saying, "We have told the Master our fears, but he is determined to go to Bethany. I am satisfied it means the end. They will surely kill him. But if that is the Master's choice, then let us acquit ourselves like men of courage. Let us go also, that we may die with him." And it was ever so. In matters requiring deliberate and sustained courage, Thomas was always the mainstay of the 12 apostles. 5. On the way to Bethany. On the way to Judea, Jesus was followed by a company of almost 50 of his friends and enemies. At their noon lunchtime on Wednesday, he talked to his apostles and this group of followers on the terms of salvation, and at the end of this lesson told the parable of the Pharisee and the publican, a tax collector. Said Jesus, "You see, then, that the Father gives salvation to the children of men, and this salvation is a free gift to all who have the faith to receive sonship in the divine family. There is nothing man can do to earn this salvation. Works of self-righteousness cannot buy the favor of God, and much praying in public will not atone for lack of living faith in the heart. Men you may deceive by your outward service, but God looks into your souls. What I am telling you is well illustrated by 2 men who went into the temple to pray, the one a Pharisee, and the other a publican. The Pharisee stood and prayed to himself, "O God, I thank you that I am not like the rest of men, extortioners, unlearned, unjust, adulterers, or even like this publican. I fast twice a week. I give tithes of all that I get." But the publican, standing afar off, would not so much as lift his eyes to heaven, but smote his breast, saying, "God be merciful to me, a sinner." I tell you that the publican went home with God's approval, rather than the Pharisee. For every one who exalts himself shall be humbled, but he who humbles himself shall be exalted. That night in Jericho, the unfriendly Pharisees sought to entrap the Master by inducing him to discuss marriage and divorce, as did their fellows one time in Galilee. But Jesus artfully avoided their efforts to bring him into conflict with their laws concerning divorce. As the publican and the Pharisee illustrated good and bad religion, their divorce practices served to contrast the better marriage laws of the Jewish code with the disgraceful laxity of the Pharisaic interpretations of these Mosaic divorce statutes. The Pharisee judged himself by the lowest standard, the publican squared himself by the highest ideal. Devotion to the Pharisee was a means of inducing